Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And I'm joined as always by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Vols on Twitter. What are you up to, you big Tennessee homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, man. It's a slow time for the SEC, Shane, but I do have a fun topic to hit on here. But it's not slow for all of college football because it sounds like the ACC may implode and the SEC may grab about all their good football teams. You know what?
That's the rumors, man. I'm on there. I see Brett tweeting. You know, they're enclosed. They're not allowed to talk to anybody. They're on some deserted island right now. You know, discussing the grim future of the ACC and you know the rumors. That's what happens, Mike. You know, during these transition, everybody seems like they want to grab a few of the teams and I'm hearing a lot of different people. You know, it's kind of funny. It's you think there's some obvious answers of who we'd want to pull into the SEC, but you know, you see some others talking about more demographics and locations, and right. I don't know, Mike. It's a weird time. Something's definitely going to happen here, but I am curious. In your opinion, do you think it immediately impacts the SEC?
No, I honestly, I think this is just speculation and hype, and people like to throw, college football fans, Shane, they're like JoJo, the little Indian boy, when there's expansion talk. That's all they can get it. You know, they just want to.
Well, then I get all excited. I'm like, JoJo, the idiot circus boy with a pretty new pet.
Yeah, they get excited about it, but I recently had a conversation on another show, and really, Shane, at the end of the day, when you think of college football expansion, this is so layered. I can go many different ways here, but can you think of a single team that has jumped from one Power 5 conference to another that it has really benefited them? And, you look at Nebraska, it's killed them. Missouri, I think getting cut off from Texas, that pipeline, I think that's kind of hurt them. The only one I could come up with is A&M. I do think they got elevated leaving the Big 12 for the SEC, but even that, the momentum they got right away, I won't say it all went away, but it's just, status quo. And the two best examples that the guy I was on with, he said, well, Utah and TCU, but they jumped from the lower level to the power level. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that it really helps anybody, Shane. And I'm hearing behind the scenes, the only one that the SEC really covets, and this, I bet you won't even, I'll let you guess first, Shane. Of all the ACC teams, and there are some good football programs there, which program do you think the SEC covets if they could get one from the ACC? And I'll give you a little hint. I don't think it's not the first one that'll come to your mind, I don't believe.
Well, see, naturally, I'm going a different route just because, I like these kind of games. It's like clearly you're thinking Clemson, maybe Florida State, but the stuff I'm seeing, it's like Virginia Tech, So I don't know. If I was guessing, I think to help the SEC, maybe I don't know, maybe North Carolina. I'm thinking other sports, basketball, a state
what,
we don't have.
They're right about you. You're smarter than you look. It is North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Breaking into a new state that the Big Ten and the SEC doesn't have a foothold in. The SEC network, not that that's a huge deal, but it is located in Charlotte, and there's no SEC footprint there. Imagine, Shane, if the Big Ten gobbled up North Carolina and the SEC offices is in Big Ten country. We'd have to move that thing out of Charlotte the next day. You know what I mean? But that's the one I hear is kind of coveted by the SEC and a Big Ten if there was a move. But here's the deal, Shane. This is all fun to talk about, but there's a thing called the grant of rights deal, and that locks in these ACC schools to where even if they could get out, Shane, they owe something like $120 million to leave the ACC, and because of that contract, they are not legally allowed to be showcased on television if they leave the ACC. So imagine if the SEC takes North Carolina and they play Alabama week 1 and that game cannot be televised. There's no value in these programs as long as that exists, and that exists till 2036. So that is the speculation. They're trying to get out of this deal, but I have no knowledge of how realistic that is, but I don't believe it is very realistic. Otherwise, I think it would have already been done.
Well, just devil's advocate here, Mike, if that did happen, if they did find a little loophole, I don't know what you want to call it. Just I was going to come up with something funny.
Like a technicality or something?
Yeah, okay, so Mike, let's say they did find a clause here and they were able to get out of this contract and it terminates immediately and there's no restrictions. I'm just thinking craziest scenario happen. Obviously, there's a lot of conferences, and I would think Big Ten would be in the conversation. I know they just added the California teams, but potentially adding a Florida team or a Carolina team, I would think that would be very beneficial for that conference. So it's almost like we would need to play some sort of defense there to keep that. Hell, Mike, you look at the NFL draft. How many kids are coming out of the Southeast? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you don't want Big Ten. They're already coming down here poaching as it is, but it seems like almost a defensive move would be required. Do you see any scenario where SEC grabs a few just to keep them away from the Big Ten conference?
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head, Shane. I mean, the only move that the SEC made, it would be a defensive move to keep a Florida State, a Miami, a Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia Tech away from the Big Ten, because that would be the only realistic way, in my opinion, that the Big Ten could kind of chip away at the SEC's dominance. But even then, Shane, I mean, we all think of the SEC. Of course, it's number one in every metric: recruiting, championships, NFL draft picks. We ain't even talking, brother, Texas and Oklahoma, which is two of the top 12 programs in the country. Throw them to the mix. You could take Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina. You could take all those and all the garbage ones too. Shane, NC State and Virginia and all the Maryland. Well, I think Maryland's already jumped the ship. But you take all those garbage teams and put them in the Big Ten, it still will not stack up to the 16 that the SEC is going to have a year from now. So I ain't scared, Shane. I ain't scared, but I think you are onto something there. You don't want the Big Ten in your backyard. Trying to make their way, because that is the main advantage, in my opinion, that the SEC has, is just that fertile recruiting ground that Ohio State and Michigan can come down here and try to get as many guys as they can. But at the end of the day, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, on and on and on is going to win out more of those recruiting battles than those northern schools. You know what I mean?
Yeah, them Yankees up there in their cold weather. Nobody wants to play in the snow. Come down here where it's sunny every day.
Yeah, you come to our spring game. Help us shovel the snow from the stands before we play this game. You know what?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's all it is, Mike. They get them recruits up there on those warm, sunny days. It's like, oh, we got inclement weather. Let's cancel that visit. We don't want to show it off just yet. So, no, I'm with you, Mike. I guess you always talk me off the ledge in these scenarios because I always think worst case scenario, but. It's just I don't know. I don't know if we've settled at 16. It's almost it feels like 20 is going to be the number for some reason in my head, that there's going to be 3 power conferences at 20 teams and pretty much that's what college football is going to look like in the future. And I don't know how close that is or if I'm even on the right path, but expansion was the talk, and it feels like we landed 2 of the best. Like you said, Texas and Oklahoma, that's not even in the mix. The millions and millions of dollars, the revenue that these teams make compared to these other conferences. Even like you said, if they add a couple of these ACC teams. I think we're still in good shape there, and it's not your papaw's SEC either. You know, everybody knows the SEC. Every kid in California knows Alabama. They know Georgia. They know these SEC programs, and it's not like you have to convince them that it's a different world. They know what is the path to the NFL, and sometimes the easiest path is just joining the SEC.
Mm-hmm. And one thing to consider, we're not even in this discussion really, but the ultimate wild card, in my opinion, is Notre Dame.
I got to do look up in the tree. Who else in the level car and say yeah?
And not that, we respect them like we do hardly any of the SEC programs, but they would add tremendous history and value and cachet to so like if Notre Dame called up Greg Sankey tomorrow and said, hey, we want to come to the SEC, they'd be in tomorrow. You know what I mean? So that is also one. And if you are going to add them, to your point, you're not going to have 17. You'll probably try to get to 18, maybe to 20, like you said.
Would you drop anybody?
No. The SEC is pretty firm on that. They're not going to.
Yeah.
I mean, there may come a time, but at this point in time, they've not even given that any consideration. I mean,
tell it to Sewanee.
They left the SEC, whereas Vanderbilt's a founding member. You know, that's the one everybody points the finger at, but the SEC is pretty firm on that.
Yeah. I was talking about Missouri, but no, I'm just kidding, Missouri. Just kidding. I like giving them a hard time.
That's going to be in the mentions tomorrow. All right. Hey, you got Big Orange Walks coming up, Shane. That's always a sign that the sorry to remind you that the season is just around the corner. Well, another one, Shane, we just got here on Tuesday. I just wanted to bring this to you and the audience's attention because I know this will fire you up. We only got 2 of these, and they've said in 2 weeks we'll have the first full 3 weeks schedules for every SEC team. But we got 2 games, Shane, for the first 2 weeks. This just gets me fired up talking about it, Shane. LSU versus Florida State, Sunday, September 13th. This is, of course, in Orlando. We knew it was going to be nationally televised, but it's official. 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central on ABC, opening week 1, not technically week 0, but week 1 of the season. And then how about this bad boy, Shane? Game we're all excited to talk about. Texas at Alabama, week 2 of the season, Saturday, September 9th, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central on ESPN.
Oh, a night game. Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, once we get these kickoffs and game coverage announced, that's when you really know the season is just around the corner. You know what?
Dude, there won't be nothing else on my TV, you know? Just that's what I love about some of those night games. You're always a little leery. So CBS doesn't officially kick in till what week is it that they step in and start taking the 3:30 slot?
I believe that'll be the third week of the season because there's no conference games, and sometimes they gobble up a non-conference showdown. But it'll be. Looking at the schedules here, I mean, there's not a lot to pick from the first couple of weeks, Shade. So it'll probably be, Tennessee, Florida is always a popular one. I believe South Carolina at Georgia, they like to showcase the reigning national champions. So I think it'll be probably one of those two.
Yeah, and I think you picked game day's first two showdowns. You know what I'm saying? These are going to be awesome. They're going to be night games, and they really are going to kind of catapult the SEC, and damn, I'm looking forward to it, brother, because it's not far away. I keep joking with the 100 days walk. I mean, it's crazy how quick that calendar bleeds down. You know what I'm saying? And and once you're within that, you start getting double digits, and man, it's just it's here before you know it. And talking about schedules and timing and stuff, people are planning trips, Mike. You know, this is the information they need to get their hotels ready and get their tailgate ready. So I'm excited for definitely college football season. These 2 games especially.
Yep. All right, Shane. So it's show topic for this episode. Just going to focus on the SEC East so we can go on a little bit of a deep dive on all these teams. We'll get to the West on the next episode. DraftKings has officially put out the over-under win totals and odds. That's critical, Shay, not just the number, but the over-under odds for each of these. I'm going to provide those to you in the audience, and then I'll give you the ones I like the most and the ones I like the least. And then we'll cap it off. DraftKings also, Shane, has Heisman Trophy odds for a number of SEC players. Again, we're just going to focus on SEC East players, and then I'll pick the ones that I like for the best odds to win the Heisman Trophy from the SEC East. Does all that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're just going alphabetical order here, Shane. Florida, over under 5.5 win total.
Ooh.
Now, again, the critical part here is the over and under odds. Over, -105, under, -115. So basically what that means, Shane, you'll cash in more if you bet on the under. So you're saying 5-7 or worse for the Florida Gators. They want you to take that over. They want you to say over for the Florida Gators, but not by much. I mean, these are -105 and -115 are basically the same. So they are right there at 5.5 for the Florida Gators. And should we go down the schedule, Shane, or should we do that at the end?
I think. Well, yeah, I think so. I think the listeners need to. I mean, This is almost embarrassing, Mike. I mean, we're talking about the Florida Gators here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not projected to even make a bowl game. I think that's alarming. And before we go into the schedule, if this comes to fruition, and obviously 5-5, 5.5 is not going to happen. But let's just say the under did happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you keep Billy here? I mean that's a tough pill to swallow. 2 years in a row, very disappointing seasons, and I know it takes a while to build something at that university, but not making bowl games, that in a place like the Swamp, that warms up a seat really quick.
Right. I mean, you ain't lying, brother. And Billy Napier's got a pretty big buyout. I mean, I think it really just depends, Shane. I mean, if they're getting, I mean, the record losing 5-7 is bad enough, but if you lose by 50 points to Georgia, if you lose at LSU by 40 points, if Tennessee beats you by 30, that's what kills you.
Yeah.
As a coach, if you lose to Georgia by 3, you lose at LSU by 7. I mean, not that the fans are going to be happy, but it's like you could see something's building there. You know what I mean? So I think that, how do you look against Florida State? Do they embarrass you in the Swamp? I'm not saying any of that's going to happen, but these I think are the things that we've got to factor in before we kick old Billy out the door before he gets to 2 seasons. I mean, because they're killing it in recruiting. I just don't know if they got a quarterback. They do have one committed, but obviously that doesn't help for this season.
No, is he the hottest seat in the East right now?
I think so.
I think Eli's got to be close. I think it's I'm not saying I'm not saying either one of them are going to get fired. I'm just, 5.5 is alarming when I'm looking at the Florida Gators. That's I guess my knee jerk reaction is, well, fire them. Let's get somebody in here can win, Right. But is there? I mean, you're talking pressure. Is that the hottest? Is that the toughest gig right now in the East?
Well, perhaps, but when we talk about Missouri, Shane, what is it? The same thing we say over and over and over is this early portion, and we'll get to Missouri in a second, but their schedule right out the gate is very manageable.
Yeah.
If they go like 2-3 out the gate, I mean, Drink may not survive the season. You know what I mean? Because we're sitting here saying that they may be 6-0, 5-1. You know what I mean? So,
right.
I think that it'll be dictated the first month of the season, but
just let them play, Shane. Let them play.
Right.
I got you. We got plenty of time to revisit this topic. I got you. All right.
So let's run down Florida's schedule real quick before we're moving on to Georgia. But, again, open the season on a Thursday at Utah. Very tricky game. And, again, shout out to Kelly Ford. We had him on the podcast last episode, Shane. He says Florida Gators, according to his metrics, toughest schedule in the entire country. So keep that in the back of your mind.
Damn.
McNeese State at home, Tennessee at home, Charlotte at home, at Kentucky, Vanderbilt at home, at South Carolina, Georgia in Jacksonville, home for Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, and Florida State at home. So some very winnable games in there, but not many layups, if you ask me. A lot of 50-50 games that they certainly can win, particularly if they take a big step forward under Billy Napier. But I don't know. It's tough to forecast right now where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike. It's a couple of coin tosses in there, and they're going to have to get a couple of them. They can't afford to lose them all, that's for sure, and they can't afford to drop one of them. I think this is one of those, and that's been kind of the knock here lately is Florida and them close games, not being able to close them out and get the victory. So that's going to have to change. That story, that narrative has got to change down there in Gainesville. They're going to have to win these close games because man, that is a tough schedule. The more you look at it, I love the stretch at home right there, but you got Tennessee and Charlotte. Hell, I don't know. I haven't researched Charlotte, but that seems like a team you can't just pencil in anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those that just pops up. But man, yeah, they got a tough road ahead of them.
The challenge, in my opinion, Shane. Remember last year, middle of the year, they were starting to heat up. And then the end was a dud. So that could certainly happen again. I mean, it's not totally unrealistic that they beat Tennessee at home, that they win at Kentucky, that they beat Vanderbilt at home, even though they lost to all three of those last year. But again, the end of the season is pretty treacherous with road trips to South Carolina, Georgia and Jacksonville, at LSU, at Missouri. You can't even overlook that because that's been a highly competitive back-and-forth series. Florida State, we'll see how good they really are, but man, that back half, I mean, every game's a 50-50. Well, you can't even say that because Georgia and at LSU, not that you can't win those, but I'd say less than 50%.
Yeah, that will be at least a two-score, favorite, I would imagine, by that point. So, yeah, I'm with you here, Mike. The schedule, the timing, none of it's pretty, but neither is 5.5, man. I'm confident. I don't know about you. I don't know if we're doing our projections here. We'll get to each team individually, later this season. But I'm still going to go the over. I just don't see a scenario where the Florida Gators don't make a bowl game this year. And I know it's a tough schedule, but I think they pull a couple of these 50s out, man. I'm going to go the over. I think the narrative's to pile on the swamp right now, and I think that's fool's gold. So I don't know about you, Mike, but I'm pretty confident we're going to go over here.
All right, how about Georgia, Shane? DraftKings sets the over/under at 11.5. But again, the critical component here is over plus 125, under minus 145. So what that is saying, Shane, is they really want you to bet the under. The under, there's not good odds on that. The odds are with the plus 125. So you'd have to be predicting that Georgia goes undefeated. And again, this is just regular season. You can't count the SEC championship. You can't count the bowl games when you're considering these over-under odds. So let's look at Georgia's schedule here. See if we can find a single loss, which is getting tougher and tougher to do these days. But
them Bulldogs are on cloud nine, ain't they?
Yeah, UT Martin at home, Ball State at home, South Carolina at home, UAB at home, at Auburn, Kentucky at home, at Vanderbilt, which is really a home game, Florida in Jacksonville, of course, Missouri at home, Ole Miss at home, at Tennessee, and at Georgia Tech. So really basically what you're betting on, Shane, is will there be a game where Georgia fails to show up or has 5 turnovers and the other team doesn't have any? You know what I mean? It's
right.
That's a tough bet to make.
I mean, basically, again, it boils down, does Georgia lose a game this year? The one that stands out is the Tennessee matchup, but it did last year, and then we Tennessee got their ass smoked down there. So I don't know. I don't think I want to ever put money against the Georgia Bulldogs right now. In fact, this was one of my favorite bets last year, was taking the over on Georgia, and I think you're going to have to roll with it again here. I mean, they don't have LSU, they don't have Alabama, they don't have Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. Some of these teams that could sneak up and bite you. Tennessee is just going to be – I mean, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, you're not overlooking them. Kirby Smart is not overlooking these programs. I think the Mizzou scare was just enough last year to set reality that you can't come in ill-prepared to any of these games. So – no, blood's in the water, and I'm going over on Georgia.
It's Shane going over on everybody, but the Bulldogs' third string would win all these non-conference games. You know what?
Yeah. I know, man. I mean, don't get me wrong. I hope Tennessee beats them. I'd love to see the Florida Georgia game come down to a score and maybe an upset. That's the crazy thing is in years past, that's what happens. How many times have we said, oh, yeah, Alabama's going to win the West, Alabama's going to win the SEC, and then they drop a game along the way. So can Georgia just keep winning? Maybe. I don't know. But you're asking kids that weren't starters last year, we're just automatically assuming they're going to be great, that they're just going to keep repeating, and I don't know. Maybe you do take the under. What's the under again here? I don't know. Now you're talking me back into it. Just one loss. That's all you're looking for here, Mike. Does Georgia lose a game? Does Georgia lose a game in your opinion?
We'll get to that in a minute, Shane. I'll give you mine here.
Okay.
All right, Kentucky 6.5. Interesting line in my opinion, but again, critical to understand the over/under odds. Over -145. Under plus 125. So what that means is they really want you to take the over. There's not good odds on taking the under. So 6.5 is the projected win total for the Kentucky Wildcats according to DraftKings. Let's run down their schedule, Shane. Ball State at home, Eastern Kentucky at home, Akron at home. My God, this is a Mark Stoops special here. Why we always talk about Georgia's schedule? We don't talk about Kentucky's. At Vanderbilt.
All three of those are at noon, Mike. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have got the whole
Can we put them on at like 8 a.m.?
They should just do a back-to-back at one of these, just double up on it like baseball. Since the fans got there, you know what I'm saying? Save your gas money. Let's go ahead and whoop Eastern Kentucky's ass while we're here.
At Vanderbilt, first SEC game, revenge game for Wildcats. Mm-hmm. Florida at home, critically important, could be the one that defines the season. At Georgia, Missouri at home, Tennessee at home, at Mississippi State, Alabama at home, that should be a big one, at South Carolina, and at Louisville to round out the regular season. So again, 6.5 is the number. They want you to go over because the odds are not great. -145. The value's at under. But given that schedule, given what we know about Kentucky, Shane, I don't think there's any way, short of disaster, that they go under. So this is a heavy over for me.
Yeah, I was waiting for it. Over. Yeah. This thing's over. But, I mean, I really do think they pick up a lot of momentum coming into that Georgia matchup. You can't mark Florida. That Florida-Kentucky game is always a fun game. It's always a tight game. But, I think Kentucky can even afford to drop a couple games that maybe they're slight favorites in or 50-50. Not saying they're going to, but even with this 6.5, I'm going to go over here with Kentucky.
Right, because, they should dominate the non-conference.
Yeah.
All they got to do is 3-5 in the SEC. That should be fairly easy.
Louisville just be icing on the cake,
All right, how about Missouri? It's also 6.5, Shane, for the Tigers. But again, the overs plus 120 and the under is -140. So they actually are wanting you to take the under for another 6-6 year for Drink, which that would not make those fans happy. But again, the path to 7 looks very realistic for the Missouri Tigers. South Dakota at home, that's the opener. Middle Tennessee at home. Kansas State at home. Memphis, but in St. Louis, so that'll be a home game. At Vanderbilt, right there. I mean, you should be 5-0, which means 2 more and you hit the over. LSU at home. At Kentucky. South Carolina at home. At Georgia. Tennessee at home. Florida at home. And at Arkansas.
That's a tough end at the, I mean,
yeah.
You go, I mean, back to back to back. There's, I'm pretty confident that Mizzou's going to be. I think they're going to be moving great here. It's these stupid teams that pop up, like the Memphis, games they've lost in years past. A team that they shouldn't lose to. Next thing you know, you're staring at early fourth quarter, and it's a possession. It shouldn't be like that. That Kansas State's going to be a tough game. But I'm looking at some of these others. I think they should be favorites early and often. But when that schedule does tighten up, they ain't got to win them all, but there's a couple of games in there, 50-50, that they just got to get one, maybe 1.5, maybe 2, I like the over, man. I think people are sleeping on Mizzou. I joked about it earlier, them leaving the league. I don't think they should leave, Mike, because I think they're going to create a lot of havoc in the East, and yeah, I'm going over big time here.
All right, how about South Carolina? Also 6.5. That surprised a lot of people. Our friend Kelly Ford says 5.5. That was an eye opener. The over -105. The under -115. So this is very similar to Florida. 6.5. No real favorite one way or the other. So this is a tricky one. And according to Kelly, Shane, who we had on yesterday, South Carolina's got the number 2 most difficult schedule in the country. Right out the gate, North Carolina in Charlotte. Future SEC showdown here. Just kidding. Furman at home. At Georgia. Mississippi State at home. At Tennessee. Florida at home. At Missouri. At Texas A&M. Jacksonville State at home, Vanderbilt at home, Kentucky at home, and Clemson at home. So a nice home slate there to cap the season. But, man, this is a backbreaker. This is similar, like you said about Missouri. Of course, Shane Beamer, they win games you don't expect them to, but they drop games you don't expect them to. So it's very tough to gauge when you're sitting here saying, well, just about every other week we got a team that could beat us on the schedule. You know what?
Well, that's the thing, man. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Which Rattler shows up? Is it the one that we saw at the tail end of the season, or is it the one we saw at the start of the season? And if the season goes bad, does the wheels fall off again? Are we looking at a Florida game that you're getting your bell rung, or is this the South Carolina team that's just going to steamroll teams in the East? I'm so back and forth. It's one of the scariest programs for me to gamble on is South Carolina, because it feels to me, Mike, that either we're all being duped into being convinced that South Carolina is a great team, or we're going to be, or there's just going to be naysayers that are completely proven wrong, like the Tennessee game and the Clemson game, and then we're looking back saying, damn, Spencer is a top 5 draft pick, So it's like, right. I just don't know which way to go here, man.
Yeah, and hey, credit South Carolina fans, Shane, because they're some of the best. They're a lot like a lot of these SEC fan bases, Shane. When you win, they love you. When you drop one, by God, what the hell you doing? We got to fire something. I mean, we went through 2 years of we got to fire the offensive coordinator, and thankfully they didn't fire him. He left, but same deal here. Again, you look at that first part of the schedule, North Carolina, at Georgia, Mississippi State at home, at Tennessee. I'm not saying they're going to lose all those games because that's crazy, but those are all losable games. That's the point. And if they come out of there and they're, I don't know, 1-3 or even 2-2, I mean, I think some fans are going to be mad as hell, and you basically got to win out to capture. There's a reason Beamer comes out here, and I love it. I love the fact he wears his emotions on his sleeve because he cares. Some of these coaches, Shane, the moment they get a job offer, they're gone. I don't think Shane Beamer's that way, but you see it in these press conferences, man. He gets emotional. He gets down when they lose. He's on cloud nine when they win. He is a fan. So, but he has come out, and I don't want to say attack the fans, but, choose joy, doom and gloom. I mean, trust me, he feels it from this fan base when they are mad at him. It's just a roller coaster of emotions. And again, with this gauntlet of a schedule, you just better be prepared to handle it, because if a rough start, if the start of the season is rough, I don't know if these fans are going to let that go. You know what I mean? No,
and that's one thing. I'm glad you said that, Mike, because you even see it when he's talking to the media. He is a very emotional coach, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's why the players love it, is the fact that he's fully invested, and he wears his emotions on the sleeve, But when the wheels fall off and the fingers start getting pointed, just like last year, everybody was blaming the OC, and then eventually it felt like it came to a head, and he just said, enough, he ain't going nowhere. So it just, I don't know. Sometimes, like you said, it's a snowball effect. If all things are good, it's going to be great. But what happens if you come out here September 2nd and lose to North Carolina? Because I guarantee you, poll the audience, there's not a Gamecock fan thinks that they're going to lose to North Carolina. But if they do, what happens? Because the schedule doesn't get easier. The South Carolina's got the toughest schedule in I would say in the country. I mean, it's brutal, brother. And when I'm looking at some of these landmines, the concern I have is, what if we're wrong about Florida? What if they're better than we think? What if we're wrong about Mizzou? They're better than we think. Then all of a sudden, those games that you just penciled in as an easy W become a tough-fought battle. So that's another thing that worries me about South Carolina. But I say all that to say this, Mike, 6.5, come on. Give me the over.
Well, one other way to look at this, and this is just, I'm trying to look at it matter-of-factly. They snap streaks against Kentucky, against Tennessee, against A&M, and against Clemson. All those programs have had their way with South Carolina in recent seasons. They did all that, Shane. They broke all those streaks, and they still lost 5 games. Because that is the gauntlet that they have to go through year in and year out. So the pressure to keep those streaks alive, I think is pretty massive on the Gamecocks if they're going to continue that. You can't be losing to those teams if you're going to continue to climb up the SEC ladder.
That's the key, Mike. You're building. Are you building something? I mean, or are you a one-hit wonder? I think that's what a lot of people are waiting to see, and I think they've got some dudes, man. They got one of the best quarterbacks. I saw it firsthand. If people that didn't watch that Tennessee, I mean it like I still have nightmares. You know what I'm saying? And that's in him. That's on that team. And if they can harness that and just keep riding that roller coaster, brother, they're gonna easily sweep through 6.5 games, easily. But a very emotional team. What happens if the wheels fall off? That's my concern. So it starts early. It cranks up early. I'm telling you, that North Carolina game is bigger than you think. I think it sends this program in a certain direction. So they have got to come out here and hit it early.
Well, speaking of a one-hit wonder, Shane, Tennessee Vols. Just kidding. You see what I did there?
Jeez, nice segue there, Mike.
Tennessee Vols. How about this, Shane? 9.5 over/under. That's even higher than I thought it would be. The over plus 130. So that's where they want you to. They want you to go under with a minus 150. So under 9.5 is the favorite, but that over I think is perhaps something you could bank on as well. So let's go down Tennessee's schedule here, Shane. Virginia in Nashville, that's the season opener. Austin Peay at home, at Florida, UTSA at home, South Carolina at home, Texas A&M at home, at Alabama, at Kentucky, UConn at home, at Missouri, Georgia at home, and Vanderbilt at home. So if you're hitting the over, Shane, I think what you're assuming is, maybe they lose to Georgia and Alabama, but they win the rest.
Yeah.
Or they pull an upset in one of those games, and who knows? I mean, it's going to be an upset either way, Shane. In Tuscaloosa or back-to-back national champions, even though it is in Neyland Stadium, either one of those would be an upset. Not saying it can't happen, because it was an upset last year when they beat Alabama. It was an upset when they beat LSU. It was an upset when they beat Pitt. It was an upset. I mean, they had a lot of upsets. You know what I mean? So yeah. I'm not saying they can't get it done, but where would you lean? 9.5 over-under on the Vols, considering the action is with the under, according to DraftKings.
Mike, I've been hurt so many damn years as a volunteer fan. I try to refrain from gambling on them. I don't. In fact, in our darkest days, I would even sometimes bet that we would lose. So then when we did lose, it didn't hurt as bad. Mike. I don't know if you've ever been there, but that was my concepts to that got me through the early late 2000s there, Dooley times. But at any rate, Mike, this is a tough one, man. 9.5 is a tough one. I could see 9, because then you're like, okay, if they lose to Texas A&M, or they lose to Kentucky, or they lose to South Carolina, or a Florida, or one of these teams that pops up, because I think that's exactly what you're looking at. They're assuming Georgia's going to beat them. They're assuming Alabama's going to beat them, and then they're assuming that Tennessee is just going to run the board. And the problem is, we always drop that one game. Right. South Carolina was that game last year. We were fortunate enough to get Alabama, but this is a streak that's went on for a long time, and to assume that we're just going to do it back to back, that's a tall order. It's not like we got Hooker back, it's not like we got Hyatt back. We lost a lot of pieces. That offensive line is reshuffled, so of course I'm going to go over, but I just think, man, that is a tough one to put some money on, Mike, because I'm just afraid that Tennessee's going to drop one that, they're going to be a favorite in. It just depends on how good Milton is and how well he takes it. But this is a line that I could see easily shifting, before kickoff.
Well, let me ask you this, Shane, and I know this is not what you're shooting for. You're always shooting for 15-0 national championship and ride or die with the Vols. But if they were to go 9-3, meaning they would most likely have a winning record in conference play, 5, that's much easier said than done, considering you got to catch Alabama, and this year you're catching A&M as well. If they were to go 9-3 and win their bowl game and win 10 games, I don't think you'd be sad by that. You see what I'm saying, or would you? Well, that's my question. Would you be happy? Not as happy as you could be, because this could be a playoff team for all I know. But I can't imagine after the last decade of Tennessee football, you're sitting here saying
2 decades.
Damn it, we went 10-3. This is BS.
Mike, and I was one of those guys. When Fulmer was kind of drifting a little bit, and we drop a few games that we shouldn't, and then we're sitting there at a 10-2 or 9-3, and we're like, gotta get his ass out of there. We're not going to win another national championship, And then you're watching Derek Dooley sitting on a stool on the sideline, or you know what I'm saying, or Lane Kiffin fleeting to freaking California as we burn sofas. It's like, I want those 10 wins, man. I used to think Georgia, same scenario with Mark Richt. They're like, just never good enough. It's like we're close, but we're just not close enough. But when you drift, man, and you're in 20 years of just turmoil, it's like you appreciate 9. You appreciate 10. I think that's why it was so emotional last year for us, because we were there. And yes, we lost to Georgia, but we didn't get our asses demolished. You know what I'm saying? Like, It wasn't a 40-point game. There's a lot of those Butch Jones years. We considered ourselves a good team, and then freaking, Saban just lit into us. We were clearly not close. It feels like we're getting closer. We feel like that gap's getting closer, which So when I'm looking at 9.5, would we be disappointed? I think there's a few Vol fans that'd be disappointed in 9 wins. Not me, because, it could be worse. We could be not making a bowl game. But, yeah, you want to see some improvement from last season. And that's just a tall glass of water, man, because Milton's not Hendon Hooker. And I think of some of those games last year, like Pitt, Mizzou, Mizzou doesn't look like it was close, but it got a little close there for a little bit. But there were some of those games that Florida, especially, that he took over, and can Milton do that? Do we need him to do that? Is there enough talent on defense now to keep us in all these games where it doesn't have to be a complete shootout? So I don't know. There's a lot of factors. I think Tennessee has improved overall, so that's why I'm leaning toward the over here. I feel like they complete business, but maybe they do beat an Alabama. Maybe they drop one at Texas A&M, but they beat. It's you make all these scenarios. So I think we're there, but then again, I've been hurt before, brother. That's what I'm saying. I've been hurt before, so I just that's why I'm still not putting any money on them.
Yep.
What does Vegas want you to do? They want you to take the over?
They want you to take the under on Tennessee.
Oh, shit. Okay. All right. Vegas usually ain't wrong, man.
All right, final team here, Shane. Vanderbilt, over under 3.5. Again,
over.
Oh, the over. The odds minus 145. The under plus 125. So they are wanting you to take the over. But just looking at their schedule, I mean, hell, they may get to 4. They may hit the over before conference play. Hawaii at home, Alabama A&M at home, at Wake Forest, at UNLV, Kentucky at home, which they beat last year, Missouri at home. They nearly beat them on the road. At Florida, they did beat them. Georgia at home, at Ole Miss, Auburn at home, at South Carolina, and at Tennessee. This may be the easiest over on the board.
Yeah, I people just no respect for Vanderbilt. I'm telling you what, buddy, they've got him a hell of a quarterback. And you're looking at those first 4 games alone. I mean, if we sit here long enough and drink enough beers, Mike, I can convince you they're going to win all 4 of them. So, yeah, give me the over here on Vandy.
So these are the ones, Shade, of everyone we just went over, the ones I like the most. I love these overs. Missouri, over 6.5 with the odds plus 120. So that Vegas is asking you to go under. They think Missouri can't get to that 7-win mark. I think they could get to 7. They may even be able to get to 8, particularly considering that opening. I mean, I think they're going to be 5-0. So, again, you're just going to need 2 out of the final 7 to hit that over. Give me Missouri in the over. That's my favorite one. Kentucky, 6.5. I also like the over, even though the odds are minus 145. So they want you to take the over here. But this is one of my stone cold locks here. I think Kentucky is going to be much better than people are giving them credit for. Vanderbilt, we just hit it, over 3.5. Again, same odds, minus 145. One under, though, Shane. Georgia, 11.5. And again, I don't know which one it'll be, and I'm not putting my mortgage on it, but I just see one slip up somewhere, something crazy. Yeah. This is college football, man. I mean, even like you said, we sit here and talk up Alabama, and then they drop a couple games. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to happen somewhere, maybe. So give me the under with Georgia, 11.5. They could still win the East, could still win the SEC, could still win the national championship. They don't give you a national championship, Shane, for going undefeated in a regular season. They give it to you for winning the college football playoff, which Georgia will still get into if they have just one regular season loss.
Yeah, I'm with you here. So your best bet was Mizzou, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt, right? You had Vanderbilt up there too.
All going over.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you here. I like it.
Now, how about we got some Heisman odds here, Shane. Not many, but we got just a couple from these SEC East guys. I'm just going to run down the list here of the odds that DraftKings gives for players out of the SEC East. And this was interesting, Shane. The best odds, according to DraftKings, Carson Beck, who's not even been named the starting quarterback, but likely will be any day now. 20-1, Georgia's quarterback. Also, but that does tie him. I should have said that. Shane ties him with Joe Milton, 20-1 odds to win the Heisman Trophy. How about this, Shane? How loaded is Georgia? Brock Vandegrift, 35-1, the third best odds in the East, and he's the backup quarterback essentially.
The water boy's on here somewhere, ain't he?
Spencer Rattler, Shane, 60-1. So Brock Vandegrift's got better odds than Spencer Rattler. That's wild to me. Crazy. Devin Leary, the Kentucky quarterback, 80-1. Brock Bowers, 100-1. Georgia's All-American tight end. God, this has got to hurt Mizzou fans, Shane. Dominic Lovett, the transfer, 150-1 to win the Heisman. And then last but not least here, Graham Mertz, Florida quarterback, 200-1. So my best bets, Shane, among those, Devin Leary, 80-1. I'm going to keep hyping up this guy till you see him in his blue and white uniform here. But, man, I love Devin Leary's game. And, again, I'm not sitting here saying he is a lock for the Heisman. But at 80-1, if I had $100 to spend, that's where I'm putting it. Devin Leary, I think he'll do big things at Kentucky. I actually have Brock Bowers, Shane, as my second best bet. I realize tight end, very hard for a tight end to win it, but he plays running back. He plays all over the field. 100-1. Give me Brock Bowers. I even put Spencer Rattler third on my list, 60-1. Give me Carson Beck, 20-1 after that. Those are my best bets for the Heisman out of the East. What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, just remember, that is the East. A lot of people freaking out. There's no West opponent.
You haven't even mentioned KJ Jefferson. We'll get there.
I can hear it right now. Remember, this is just the East. So, yeah, I mean, you can make an argument there. I like Devin Leary just because I think the opportunity when you're looking at winning a Heisman, for some reason, it's not just the best player. It's where'd you go? You know, did you make an SEC championship? Did you make it close to it? Or are you in talk for the college football playoffs? I think that's what you're going to have. The thing I love about Leary is the schedule. I think, there's a couple pivotal games, Alabama, Georgia. You're going to have your opportunities to have that Heisman moment. So, that one, you could argue Spencer Rattler. I think he should be a little bit higher, especially than Brock Vandegrift. And but I think it's going to boil down to those two top dudes, man, Beck and Milton. Milton's going to have a shit ton of stats. And if all goes well, it's going to be there was an argument last year with Hooker, and he even lost the last game and a half, didn't get to play. So what happens if Milton stays healthy? And, it's a stat thing, but it's going to require some big wins. It's going to have a win over Georgia, a win over Alabama, something like that. So Carson Beck, that's just an easy one, man. That's a layup. That's just, hey, most likely what's going to happen here. Georgia wins an SEC champion, wins a national championship, and that may be on the back of Carson Beck. So if I'm betting, Mike, I'm going to go Beck just because I like easy money. I still, you know what I'm saying? You're asking for a lot of things, miracles to happen for Milton, miracles to happen for Rattler. That tough schedule, Leary the same. It's like if Beck just shows up, you know what I'm saying? I think this is going to be more of I think there's going to be more passing involved with Georgia this year than years past. The kid's got a hell of an arm on him. They got a lot of talent around him. It's going to be tough for any opponent to slow down the Bulldogs. And I just think Beck's just an easy bet, because these high that's one thing they showed us last year, Mike. They're not really paying attention. They just take the best player from the best team and they cast their vote. They're voting this stuff in September and there's still football games left, and it drives me nuts. So because of that, until they clean up how the Heisman's selected, give me Beck here.
All right, brother. Well, hey, that was quite the deep dive on the SEC East. We'll get to the SEC West on the next episode. You got anything before we hop off the line?
No, I just did a row of Fig Newtons before I got on here, man. I'm telling you, I'm spiraling. You know what I'm saying? That little doctor that comes on those I can't remember his name. You've seen them shows, and fat people come in there and they're like, he's like, you got to stop eating carbs, Shane. You know, it's like, I can just see him right now just shaking his head. Don't worry, that big orange walks kick off here in 2 days. So I'll be ready to roll.
I think it's 1 day.
Oh yeah, this comes out on the 17th. Oh shit, yeah. We're 1 day closer. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I don't either, Siri. You know, she said my heart rate just kicked up a notch. No, I'm ready. No, dude, seriously, I'm ready. It's to that point. I can't wait. I got family getting involved. I will say this, brother. A lot of support online. I appreciate everybody listening. You know, hell, y'all are. I know I didn't do it last year. I know I didn't finish. There's been some funny comments about that, Mike. I mean, we got bourbon bets from Todd up in Kentucky that I ain't going to hit 30-something, you know. I mean, it's the coming out. I get that, you know, but there's a lot of folks there said, you could do it, man. You could do this, and family's with me, and we're going to do it, man. We're going to do it. 100 days. I'm going to feel better. The shows improve when I'm you know, clearly thinking and healthy. So, Mike, I'm gearing up for SEC Media Day. So, brother, that's all I got. I'm just going to get off here and finish my Fig Newtons, I guess. I said all the healthy stuff. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not.
Yeah, well, we all got jokes about it, Shane, but just know we're all pulling for you to complete those 100 days leading up to SEC football. Can't wait to see your face when you finally cross that finish line for the 100th time. But that's going to do it, brother, for this episode of the show. Appreciate you as always. I appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right, see you guys. Go Vols. Get it.